question answer session. There are a lot of questions coming from the listeners. First question to Dr. Shroff itself. Almost everybody is asking about when to start. So when is the key? That's what everybody is asking.
This is so uncertain, I think at some stage the lockdown is got extended up to the end of the month. We'll have to wait at least till the lockdown is over. I think we'll have to assess the situation every few weeks and see what's going to happen. We can't keep postponing it forever.
So
Obviously, at some stage we have to start, but it is suggested that the peak of the curve in India will probably happen in June, and it will not be before July, August that the numbers will start showing a decrease. That's what I'm told by my infectious disease doctor. Even the other day we had a webinar. So when are we going to start? What risks we're going to take? The question is going to be how much of resources will be available in time to come, and how the beds are going to be filled in the hospital, and that is the key. If the hospitals are inundated with these cases of COVID-19, then we will be stuck. That's the problem. We don't know that.
Sir, some of the people, they want to ask, like if you say that the peak is coming in June, so better to do it now so that we can avoid at the time of peak of COVID-19.
So the problem is you don't know who is asymptomatic carrier.
Okay.
At least in transplants. Because the mortality is not 2% as they were saying, it is 6% even in normal situation. But one thing good about India, I'll tell you, is this. Our population is young compared to the older population of Italy, where they have a lot of deaths. Compared to Japan and Italy, they have older population. So we have a young population. So maybe it will hit us a little less. That's our hope.
Okay. Another thing, that there's a recent paper that is available on PubMed, which says that the mortality of elective surgery in COVID-19 patients is almost 20%. So if you go by that rule, most likely in transplant patient it will be much more than 20%.
Absolutely, I
so
totally agree.
that's going to be very disastrous.
That's why transplant should definitely be looked at very, very carefully, except for the heart, except for the lung perhaps. There again, high risk consent should be taken. We need to be extremely careful, because tomorrow, if a staff in your hospital gets infected in all this process, they can also sue you. Forget about the patients. And they have families to do.
Because can I say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please.
So I think what Dr. Sunil Shroff said, that at present government has sent this circular. Now I want to ask that this government circular, is it mandatory to follow, and it's a blanket circular for everyone? Because this situation, what we are in now, I don't think this situation is going to go away. Technically, even if the lockdown is lifted on 15th, or if it is extended up to 30th, or even if it is lifted after 30th of April, the situation what we are in is not going to get changed. 100% is not going to change. Suddenly, just because lockdown is over doesn't mean that now everything is fine and now we start doing elective transplant. So why this government circular has come, and as association, why are you not objecting to such a blanket circular that all elective transplant should be stopped? I want to ask that question to Dr. Sunil Shroff.
See, the blanket circular doesn't say that all elective transplant should be stopped. It is your discretion, your hospital's discretion. They said elective surgeries may be postponed. All elective surgeries should be postponed as far as possible, because just to be safe, nothing else. It is your hospital's policy. If you have adequate PPE, if you have adequate resources, if you have adequate staff, if you can get a proper consent, and if you want to go ahead, the government is not going to stop you.
Okay, so that means it is an individual center has to.
And again, it's your state circular as well. If your state has some certain circular, then you'll have to go by that. So there's nothing like, Dr. Anand Kumar's hospital also, which was doing liver kidney transplant in the COVID-19 period, now has stopped. Anand, do you want to say something? We had some discussion on this previously also.
It is like in my hospital, they have made a rule. All admissions will have COVID test, and test will be done. Patient is admitted, test is done. Once negative, only then he will be operated upon. I can tell you, I was talking to some of my friend in America and England. They are telling the patients who are COVID positive, and if you have to operate, even doing PC and a DJ stenting or something, there is so much of cytokine syndrome, they become very inflamed, and sometimes they become very sick and very quickly. And some of them have died even with the smaller procedures. So that is the one thing, these patients have a cytokine storm and they become inflamed, and then saving them becomes difficult. That is the one thing. But that question which I asked, that is very true. And you know, India's situation is very different. We are not in NHS, and our Prime Minister has changed the logo from Jaan Hai to Jahan Hai to Jaan Vi or Jahan Vi. I think we have to, we can hold on, for everybody is getting not getting salary like NHS. And so we have to slowly start doing it semi-urgent, urgent cases, and maybe all COVID negative patient with all precaution. We will have to do it. And transplant patients are pushing, they are ready to sign the consent. We are just ask our legal department in this situation, if you do it and take their consent, what will happen. So they are exploring it, because some of the patients are pressing to do our transplant. We sign the consent, we are waiting, and they have come from other cities or other countries. So these problems we cannot keep on ignoring. So that issue is there.
Dr. Aditya, you want to say
Dr.
something?
Anand sir, yeah. Dr. Anand sir, in continuation with the transplant and COVID, I would like to ask, most of the transplant patients may not really show symptoms of initial infection. So what would guide us if some of our post-operative patient, or maybe non-transplant, slightly immunocompromised patient develops COVID?
See, the question is, when you admit and you do, the question is, suppose he is in incubation period, whether his incubation period of day 1 or day 4 or day 5, all that things will matter. Because virus load which you take, nasal pharyngeal, noropharyngeal swab, depends on the load, and it is 70% accurate. There are 30% false negative. So they may be positive, but it may be negative. So
Sir.
you might miss them, and
Sir.
and they will develop in post-op. So once they are negative in the post-op, you have to again repeat their test to see what is happening. That is to safeguard all the people who are involved in taking care of these patients. So when the patient is going, then they should have one more test, and they should be followed up with any symptoms in the post-operative period to take care of the staff. So all those problems are there.
Sir, this is regarding COVID-19 testing. It is not very commonly done, sir. I think in Delhi and other metropolitan cities, we may get it done.
I know this we have a lot of debate in our hospital. ICMR, we have sent an ICMR in private hospitals. Now you can do it, your patients whom you are going to operate. And it is the question of payment. Our hospital is paying for it because it is safety of their staffs and everything. Otherwise, it is not recommended. And next week, we are going to get the antibody test, serum test, which is very quickly done. And that will show the IgM and Ig antibodies, which will be done on 7th day and 14th day, which will show that who is recovering and who has developed antibodies and all that. So probably that test is coming next week. So meanwhile, these problems are there. Now you have to take our anesthetist, they said, we will not operate till you show us COVID negative report.
Sir, like question was really related to recent patient scenario we had. Suppose a transplant or cystectomy patient who is having just high TLC, blood culture negative, urine culture negative, nothing else coming positive, procalcitonin 0.9. On TLC is 20-25 despite all symptoms. Should we really suspect COVID in such a case?
This happened 2 days back. There was a patient, our old patient of cancer prostate, who has the urea creatinine was rising. So we suspected maybe he is developing ureteric obstruction because he was in abiraterone and ADT. So he came, he had some fever and some cough. And probably we suspected it is because of the renal failure and lung congestion. And he's 80-year-old, but the hospital didn't. They put it in a COVID suspect ward. His test was done. He is now negative, shifted to the other Western Bloc.
Coming to this,
there he is. We are now treating him. Now he is showing the more symptoms. So we are again testing him. So we are going to have this problem.
Coming back to transplant patients with COVID-19 infection, they may not have typical symptoms. They may not even have fever. You know, so their symptomology also we don't understand. Yeah, they suddenly may come with flare up. And it may be a very difficult situation to control because many of them will not manifest with fever. So this is why, it's so difficult sometimes to catch them early also in this post-transplant period.
No, I was reading the paper which published from Italian about the kidney transplant. Fever is there. The fever symptom is there.
No,
So
no, but
fever is one of the
remember,
predominantly it is there.
no, I know, but
And then they are also doing CT.
but
CT
there are reports
is
from
right
China,
after-
Anand.
Yeah.
China was the first to report. There are reports from China where they said that fever may not be the manifestation of corona infection in patients with transplant. This is what I read. Anyway, more reports will come. We are still learning about this disease.
Sir, we'll go to the questions from the
We have a
listeners,
lot
sir.
of questions, yeah, sir.
Yes, yes.
Let's keep moving.
So,
Okay.
Dr. Sabnis, sir, Dr. Vikas, please go on.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Sabni, sir, Dr. Badev Olak wants to ask you, what is the lower limit of acceptable GFR in relation to donor age? As you said, 60 ml GFR is acceptable. Whether
Yes.
it is acceptable in 40-year-old male or 40-year-old donor or 60-year-old donor?
No, actually, this 60 GFR is a borderline GFR, and therefore, what you need to consider is that every case has to be individualized. If the GFR is about 60, if the patient is thin-lean, maybe 50 years, maybe 60 years, whatever, if he is thin-lean, if the recipient is thin-lean, then this low GFR can be accepted. But if the patient is a good BMI, whatever age, whether it is 40 years, whether it is 50 years, whether it is 60 years, and if GFR is about 60, then obviously this is not acceptable because this BMI, with this BMI, it is not, this GFR is not going to be sufficient once the one kidney is out. So every case has to be individualized. It cannot be a blanket that if it is 40 years with this GFR, I will accept it. If it is 60 years, I will not accept it. Or if it is vice versa, every case needs to be assessed as per the merit. And this aspect has to be considered discussed with the relatives, with the recipient, and then the decision has to be taken. But from our point of view, if the mother is donating, if mother's GFR is 60, she is thin-lean, the son is thin-lean, then I will go ahead with 60 GFR, there is no problem. But if there is a brother who is donating, who is 40 years, if his BMI is 25, 26, if the recipient is also obese or recipient is thin, then I will not go ahead with this donor because he has a long life and he's also not such a thin-lean patient.
Dr. Anish, want to add something?
Yeah, Aditya, can I? See, actually, this figure of 60 is being followed by most of us in this country. And this is based on the studies from SCPGI, from PGI Chandigarh, and a couple of more centers, where we have done and we have found that the GFR values in our population are actually lower, because if you say take Western counterparts, it is more than 80 or sometimes 90. But here, I think there is a scientific basis, and in our center also, of course, there are individual variations, but by and large, the cutoff is 60.
Well, we have
Dr.
followed the
Sabnis, sir.
path,
Dr. Anand Kumar wants to say something.
Yeah.
Achha.
See, now there is a table, age and surface area adjusted GFR. And that table is there. And nuclear medicine people have that table. And that is done with the drawn from the Indian population. And you adjust it. If the adjusted GFR is in acceptable range, only then you take it. If it adjustable GFR is not in that rate, then you may not take it. And there's another aspect of it. And when that is there, you see the two kidneys. If one of the kidney is good, if you leave that and take a kidney which has got less, and you have to warn the family if they take it or not, then only then that is situation you might take that one. But family should be warned, written consent should be taken, because later on they will change their statement.
Okay. So we'll go to the next question. To Dr. Anand Kumar, sir. This use of vessel dilator, what is the chances of intimal damage by it, sir?
Yeah, that's what I said. You do it very gentle dilatation. Don't do over dilatation. And these vascular dilators are made, all coronary arteries are dilated, all internal memory arteries are dilated with this. And it is made for this purpose, but don't over dilate. If you over dilate, you will have this problem.
So that is very subjective thing. Dilatation and over dilatation.
Dr. Anand, I think generally, is there really a need to dilate? That is
Exactly.
the point. I mean,
It's
I mean,
just by the
I know it is. You are very
the line
senior
dilatation
and
sometimes really
Very
helps.
good.
I'll tell you. See, when you take out the kidney, at the end of it, you always see while you when perfusing it, you will see the lumen is less because there is some degree of spasm when you are handling the. Finally, you are handling, putting the clip and taking it out. Anyway, as you
Video
tell,
setting.
it is spasm. So when you do gentle dilatation, that spasm is gone, and some of the time you have seen you have put the
Live
kidney,
stream है.
perfused it, and kidney is soft, perfusion is not great. You just wait for some time. You bring
सारे
the
आते हैं ड्रॉप डाउन में, लेकिन एक फ्रेम में नहीं दिखते ना, 4 दिखते हैं, 2 नीचे स्क्रॉल डाउन में
you
आते
see
हैं.
that things are changing. So if you have done it before, it makes a difference.
I think I will also agree with Dr. Anand Kumar that quite often, actually, when you bring the kidney out, it is so narrow, and when you gently dilate it, it becomes quite a wide lumen. The anastomosis becomes quite easy, and it does not cause any problem. So I totally agree with Dr. Anand Kumar that gentle dilatation, and in fact, we do in almost every case.
But Dr. Chavez, that will actually go away. If you see, by the time you take the kidney in, it's generally 15 minutes, half an hour. And we have seen that, it goes away. If you stimulate the intima, logically, it should go into more spasm. I mean, this is endless debate. So,
I totally agree. I want to make a very quick comment. In this, if you spatulate your vessels, then you are likely to get a diameter in any case. I don't need to dilate unless I'm doing it on an inferior epigastric and lower polar vessel. Sometimes I dilate. Very, very rarely we dilate. It would be good to have a poll among the audience as well. How many people dilate?
Right.
Again, ever-growing controversy. Very small vessels sometimes just required, but generally speaking, I avoid dilatation. A good spatulation does the trick as far as I'm concerned. And most of my anastomosis is on external ileus. So
there is always
it's
same controversy regarding spatulation versus no spatulation.
Yeah.
So I think that goes on.
Sir, there's an important question coming up regarding right lap donor nephrectomy. How to take the IVC cuff? What is the best way to avoid complications? I think Dr. Anand, sir, you can start with that.
What is the question?
What is the best way to take a IVC cuff during right laparoscopic donor nephrectomy? How to avoid complications?
Donor nephrectomy, you cannot take IVC cuff. You may take it a bit of IVC by putting the hemola clip upside down, or you can stretch. So what we do, we gently stretch the renal vein, gently stretch the kidney, so renal vein get stretched. Then put the 15 mm clip, put it this way that curve goes to the eye side, and then we apply it, and next clip again applied over the IVC. So that way IVC is clipped, and when we cut it, we always get, till now, we have done more than 250 right side donor nephrectomy, and only one case, that too in my early period in Sanjay Gandhi, I have to extend the length with the saphenous vein. Otherwise, all vessels we taken care of without much problem. I tried putting Satansky, but Satansky, we don't have that kind of curve in laparoscopic Satansky as we get in open surgery. So I tried and all that, and I given up. And the same thing that IKDRC people are doing, they're firing 2 staplers and putting it up, and that they are showing that bit of IVC comes with it, and that can come out, same bit can come out with the 15 mm hemola clip, put it the curve towards the IVC. Otherwise, nothing will come.
So what is your cutoff of the vein length doing laparoscopically? Is there any cutoff for all the cases you do laparoscopically?
We rarely, only patient we have done non-laparoscopic.
boss, ye keh raha tha.
There was some problem of not giving GA. Otherwise, we always do it laparoscopy. We rarely done in last 20 years any open surgery.
No, the vein length on right side, whether if it is less than 15 mm, then also is it fine? Because right side vein is usually small and very thin walled. So
in CT scan, the length what is shown is very deceptive.
Yes.
Take it out, and we are prepared. In any case, it is too small or something, then we will reconstruct it. But after that, one case it is never required. And while the most important thing, those who have worked with me, It is very important when you are doing the right side anastomosis, use 603 and never lift the kidney. When the venous anastomosis is done, it is shifted one side, other side, kidney is not touched. If you touch the kidney and pull it, then you have a problem. So that
Yes.
that important issue has to be taken into consideration.
Agreed.
Dr. Aditya.
Okay, Dr. Sabnis, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there is a question, there is a clinical scenario that donor has got 3 arteries on the left side,
Yes.
single vein, and a 6 mm and a 3 mm concretion and 6 mm calculus. And right side kidney has got single artery, single vein, that's it, no calculus, nothing. So first thing is, should one go easily for the right side instead of avoiding 3 arteries on the left? Or if we are going for the right side, should we take
No, actually,
on the left side?
I can understand this dilemma where to which artery to which side to take up. First and foremost, this is a problematic case. So first, your reaction should be that if there is any other donor possible, we must explain to the family that if there is any other donor, it is preferable because either way, this donor has a problem. Quite often, we have seen that we try to adjust amongst ourselves and decide ourselves. But then if there are any complications, the relations say, no, why you have told, why you did not tell us that we had another donor, we could have told that donor to come forward. So this is very, very important to tell that in case if this donor is accepted, it is a high risk from every point of view. Now, suppose this is the only donor relatives have understood, then which one to take? Now, 3 arteries, they all depend on what is exactly the size of the artery. If the size of the artery is not all that bad, then doing
None can be
anastomosis,
sacrificed.
2 arteries we routinely do it. Additional 1 artery doing, which is of a sufficient size, is not a problem. Because if there is a stone on one side, other side kidney, you have to leave the other side kidney for the donor. That is one. Suppose the arteries are in such a way that it is very difficult to anastomose, it is very likely that they are going to have problem. Then what you need to do is that treat this patient with the RIRS or whatever. Make sure that with CT scan everything is properly done. Then do metabolic study and then explain to the patient that he has to be under proper follow-up and then take right side kidney without any problem. Because the corollary to that is that now we are seeing this stone as an incidental finding. Now we have seen many patients, especially in Gujarat, that everything is fine, and the patients later on come with the formation of stone. Now, what is the justification of that? Does that mean that you should not do transplant at all? Do not take any kidney from anywhere? It is not like that. Once you ensure that this stone is completely cleared up, make sure that metabolic workup is normal, and then you can take the other side. There is no problem.
So can we give patient an option of stenting left side kidney while removing right side kidney for the donor at that time? Suppose he
No, I think
is not ready for RARS.
that's not right. It is always good idea to clear that stone before you do donor nephrectomy and confirm that with CT scan so that you don't want any problem to occur. Sometimes some stone can come down and create problem. It's a single kidney status now. That digestant is fallacious. To treat the stone, ensure with plain CT that everything is clear and then take the other kidney. No problem.
Okay. So the next question that is coming is presence of aneurysm, asymptomatic aneurysms in renal donors. Dr. Sabnis, sir.
Yes. So asymptomatic aneurysm,
true, Dr.
again,
Sabnis,
there is a dilemma where exactly that aneurysm is, whether it is an intrarenal aneurysm, whether it is a major segmental artery aneurysm. There are reports where the kidneys, same side kidneys are taken up, aneurysm is repaired on the bench and then subsequently transplanted. So this is a dilemma which the individual surgeon has to take. But if there is an asymptomatic aneurysm, that kidney cannot be left to the donor. That is for certain.
Dr. Sabnis, what should be the criteria for donors with asymptomatic hematuria? Microscopic
hematuria.
Donor with microscopic hematuria, if the angiography, obviously you are going to do, If angiography is perfectly normal, and if all other tests are normal, I don't think asymptomatic microscopic hematuria should be given importance. We can go ahead.
Can I just speak?
Sir, Dr. Anant, yes.
Yeah, microscopic hematuria, there is a certain guidelines. If you don't see anything, we should do the crenated RBC, whether it is a glomerular origin or non-glomerular origin, and you should also do it microalbumin very carefully, and give some time for this donor to development of microalbumin if the crenated is positive. And because they could have this benign condition which may come up, I'm just missing the name of benign condition. There is a one benign nephrological condition which may come up, and this patient is to be watched very carefully. If that is there, then even if you are, and people have gone even then the biopsy of the kidney, and if everything came out normal, only then they accepted.
Is it IgA nephropathy?
Can I just add?
It's not IgA nephropathy. There is some other.
Can I just add? We had similar discussion about the microscopic hematuria. Obviously, before patient is referred to the urology, they always do dysmorphic RBCs and all those microalbuminuria and all those things are come up. But these are all small microscopic hematuria, 2 to 5 RBCs, 8 to 10 RBCs, which after angiography and after thorough evaluation, if they are all right, then we have gone ahead with transplant, and so far everything we have not repented.
So there is another question to Dr. Sabnis, sir. What is your experience, long-term outcome at your center with obese donors?
Obese donor, and in fact, previously our cutoff was 30. Now we have increased the cutoff to 35. And even in 35 group, we explained to them that unless you are committed to reduce the weight in 3 months, if you follow proper diet and make sure that at least 1 or 2 kgs have lost, which shows that your intention is all right, then we go ahead and following up these patients for long period of time. At least we have not faced any problem simply because we have taken that much obese donor any time in the past. Maybe recently we have started taking some donors which are borderline, maybe 35, 34, 33 like that. But long-term data from our point of view is about the less than 30 donor. This cutoff recently we have increased.
Sir, one question is about tumor markers in donor. Like what all you do in males and what all you do in female donors. What is the extent of your investigation, sir?
No, any additional tumor markers, we don't do it. If it is more than 50 years, we just do PSA. If it is a male donor, and in every patient female, we do pap smear. But otherwise from that, we don't do any tumor markers.
Dr. Sabnis, last on this list of donor workup, can you just touch the topic of HLA workup and ABO just for the...
Okay. So HLA workup and ABO now, as you know, every center has started doing across the blood group transplant. So ABO is not now any more criteria to reject the donor. But of course, ABO workup is definitely required to decide about the plasmapheresis and whatever. Now, again, this negative positive business does not come in transplant. You can do from positive to negative, RH positive, RH negative. There is RH has nothing to do with transplant. So that is about ABO and RH. Now HLA, you never refuse any person who is a full mismatch. Technically, the wife can be completely mismatched, sibling can be mismatched, mother, father, they have to be haplomatched. But on HLA, there is no patient who is refused to be accepted as donor. What is important is the cross match. Cross match in our center is done twice. Once when the workup is started, at that point of time you do cross match. If cross match is positive, the workup is not started at all, and cross match again is done just before transplant to ensure that in the process of waiting they are not become positive, because sometimes they acquire some days whatever. So that twice it is done. If cross match is positive, definitely they are not for the live related kidney transplant.
So which type of cross match you prefer, and what is about DSA and other parameters which we check?
Yeah, so now previously it was only lymphocyte cross match, a simple cross match was being done. But now with the recent development with molecular lab, They are doing the donor-specific match. They have Linux platform in which they get lots of subgroups analysis. But on that, it is not rejected. On that, they know that this patient may require plasmapheresis. They may require to undergo certain things. But this is only to decide what sort of a pre-op preparation you are going to do and what sort of a post-op follow-up in the immediate post-op, what treatment you are going to give. But once your gross lymphatic cross match is negative, you can definitely go ahead. All these methods are decided to give any plasmapheresis beforehand or not.
And in case of wife, what
But
is
these
the
are all
role of doing
complex things
HLA
which
overall?
nephrologists generally manage.
If in case of wife, why it is needed to do HLA? We may not expect any match at all.
Usually for the medical.
No, you don't expect it, but as per the Transplant Act, I think the HLA is required. It is not that you are going to refuse. It is not going to match. Sometimes there could be match, one or two loci can be matched, but I think it is required by the Act that HLA is done in all patients. I think Shraf can throw light on that. Our center, even if it is wife, every patient HLA is done.
Dr. Anand sir wanted to add something.
There is in the act, there is nothing there for wife you have to do HLA. That is not there. Sometimes we do wife HLA when we suspect whether she is wife or not, because if there is a kid, then you can do the HLA of the kid and wife and husband, and you will come to know whether the relationship is there or not. Otherwise, it is not done. Second way of doing why HLA is done for wife, if you are doing studies, then you can see what is the HLA mismatch and what is the rejection rate and all. Otherwise, there is not in the law that wife HLA has to be done.
Sir, next question to you only, sir.
One quick comment on this. I make a quick comment. The law wants only to prove relationship between brother, sister, father, mother to do HLA or molecular typing, genetic typing. In the case of wife or any unrelated donation, they want to prove that there is an altruistic motive. And in that wife case, documentation is very important. That's what the law requires. The law doesn't require to do HLA, as Dr. Anand Kumar rightly said. Sabnish, this is our take on the law.
Okay. So do you do HLA in wife if the spouse is a donor? Do you do HLA in those cases?
No.
As a hospital policy, do it, and sometimes surprisingly we do find some matches also. But you don't need to do it as such.
Yeah, but at least our hospital we do HLA in all.
That's your hospital policy. That's fine.
And sometimes we find that there are one or two loci which are actually matching.
Exactly. Same thing here.
In Muslim community, there will be more match. Marry in the.
There is South Indian community where there is a marriage between the families also. So that is interesting.
Dr. Anand Kumar, sir, people want to understand your technique of arteriotomy inside out when you are doing an anastomosis, end-to-side anastomosis of a small vessel to the main artery. That inside out, people are not able to understand what is.
No, see, that question is when you are trying to do it, even if you have a stab knife, it is difficult to go cut and you may not hit the opposite artery. So what you do, you put a vascular forceps inside the lumen. So once you put it, the lumen, it will get open up, and there you can take the stab knife, you can cut it here, or you can take the pot scissor from inside, take it out, so the sharp edge will come out, then you dilate it and make it a bigger. This is just to avoid injury to the opposite wall. So you can do it anyway, but the whole idea is to make it simpler so that you do not avoid injury to the opposite wall.
Dr. Anand sir, in your opinion, in current era of minimally invasive surgery, what is current role of?
No, I couldn't hear you. Your voice was not.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah.
In your opinion, in the era of minimally invasive surgery, what is the role of open donor nephrectomy?
One role is if you don't do how to do laparoscopically safely, unless you have done a lot of laparoscopic, you are safe. You should not attempt laparoscopic because donor safety is very important. If you have if you have less experience or no experience, do an open surgery. That is more important because donor safety is important. If you have enough experience, you can do it, you are confident, then there is no need to do open surgery. and we haven't found any reason to do it, except there are patients, you will say why you have accepted it, but there is a long story to cut down it. There are 2 times there is a patient who has no other problem, everything was excellent, except he was a smoker and his lung capacity was not good, so he was rejected because of lung capacity. And that time we said that if we give epidural anesthesia and local anesthesia, both the time donor were thin, we can take it out. Anesthetist has objection. Suppose for some reason we have to intubate him or put him on ventilator, he won't come out. But all those risks were explained, they taken, and both the time we were successful. I don't know when you were there it happened or not. Then we gave epidural anesthesia, and then we did local and took out the open surgery. Otherwise, everything we have been able to manage, all the anomalies, everything laparoscopically.
It was my time, sir. I was there, I think.
Yeah.
No, but my question is that if you have such a patient who can't even tolerate any anesthesia, is he a fit donor or not? Should we
That's
take
what I
him
said.
as a donor or not?
It
If
is
he
a
has
long-
such a problem that he can't even be intubated, there is so much of problem, then why is he taken as donor?
Yeah, if you have asked this, I can tell you. It should take 2 minutes to explain. There was a patient who had a transplant. By mother has given 6 year kidney worked very well. Then he had second transplant. In the only family, the father was now available. Father, everything, heart was okay, everything was okay. He was thin, but he was a smoker. His pulmonary function was not good, and he was also very committed. Initially, I can show all the records. Patient was rejected. Nephrologist has written a very bad comment. That comment I have on my laptop. Then we discussed it. We have hospital meeting, and then we took a consent, and it was presumed that since he's so thin, if we give epidural and local, we may be able to take out the kidney. So we went ahead, and within 45 minutes, we took out the kidney, closed everything. Patient went very well. He did very well. But you know what happened? After 3 years, recipient died because of cysticercosis and some brain parasitic infection, and father is still alive. And even I saw him 1.5 years after the son death. He came for some other reason. So because of prostate problem and all that. So that is the thing. And it was another person, similar problem, and we did it. So, and I have done more than 3,500 cases, only 2 occasions. There are some times when they have another donor, we reject it. But these are the time I know I was walking on a very tight rope. If something would have happened, then I would have been major soup. But you have to take all the risk. And with
Aditya, if I can just add one thing,
Yes, sir.
that in the current era, I think whether it is right, left, everything is done by laparoscopy, but only situation where you can do open is that if you are taking right side, the vein is very small, there are multiple veins which are actually joining, is the only donor. Then what we have done is that laparoscopic dissection, and then we take a small incision in the subcostal region, and retrieval is by open method, where you can actually put 2 proper clamps, Satansky clamp, and take a nice proper cuff, and that is a better way of doing. So that is the only situation which I can think of in a current era about the open surgery.
yes, you are right.
So just one addition, like keeping abdominal pressures low, because the discretion of giving GA versus spinal epidural is of anesthetist. If we give enough confidence to the anesthetist that we can operate in pressure 8 to 10, many of the nephrectomies and lap surgeries we could convert to lap from actually open. So maybe that is one thing one can try.
Sir, multiple vessels. Dr. Anand Kumar, sir.
Yeah.
What is your instruction to the young surgeons who are evolving from a single vessel to multiple vessels? Which is the best or simple most anastomosis they should do? It's pantaloon, or they should make 2 separate anastomosis, or inferior epigastric and the main artery anastomosis?
The first advice, make lot of fistulas. That will make you very friendly with handling the vessels. That is the one thing. And while doing it, be careful and do it with like I do it with a vessel without touching the vessels and all that. You can do it. Don't touch the intima. That is another thing is very important. Second thing is, yes, in a reconstruction, bench reconstruction under hypothermia is always a preferred technique, because you don't hurry up, your vision is good, you can rotate inside the kidney here and there without much problem, and you can check whether anastomosis is okay or not. You can test it. So that way is better. But there are situation where you can't do it, then you have to do it in situ.
Okay, you mean to say bench dissection is a bench?
Because
Sir.
I think rather than having a blanket, whether it is bench or in situ, it all also depends on what is the situation. For example, if the two arteries are there where nearby, then you can equal size. I think Dr. Anand Kumar highlighted that very much. Equal size, better to do side to side pantaloon anastomosis. Okay. But equal size vessel which are very much away, then if you start doing side to side pantaloon anastomosis, they may cause some kinking. So it all depends on where exactly how the local situation is.
Sir, just
if
one.
There is a disparity, Anand Kumar highlighted, it should be a separate one.
Sir, just one point. This is all going live, and I would really request, we have very lot of questions, so we like to cover more number of questions. So if we can have a very
quick comment on this question, which is important for youngsters who want to start. Go for workshops. There are workshops available on vascular anastomosis. You know, Ethicon guys sometimes do it. So look for those workshops and do those workshops as well. It really helps you to get your technique right. Besides Tushlas.
So question is to Dr. Anand sir. What special precaution you would suggest in onward second, third or fourth transplant?
I have not done fourth one, but I have done third transplant. And the problem comes where to place it. But usually it is placed on right side higher up, third transplant. And before that, you should make sure that ureter is okay. So you can do RGP and make sure that ureter is there. It has not been tied up. It is there. Because if you are putting it higher up and already bladder and everything is dissected, and if there is a native ureter, then you can very safely stitch it. And there you will do it, artery will go to the common iliac artery and vein will go to the right side IVC. But recently we have done a very interesting case. Just take 1 minute to explain. The patient was done for initially in Mauritius, they were doing right side. I don't know, something happened. They had a right side injury of the vessels. They couldn't do it and patient was sick. So they airlifted to my hospital. So first what we did with the help of vascular surgeon, we put the graft on right side from common iliac to the femoral artery, and right side limb was salvaged. And when he became all right, he came out ICU with everything. We did first transplant on left side. Now, this was done in 2008 when I was in Apollo Hospital. Now he has come 2020, but that kidney has failed. Now the right side, he has 3 operations. He had appendicitis, he had this stool exploration, 1 transplant vasculation, 1 vascular exploration. And the left side, the kidney was put higher up at that time. So what we did orthotopic transplant in that situation. We did, the left ureter was okay. So we used the splenic artery for renal artery, and renal vein was for the renal vein, and ureter to ureter anastomosis was done. So you have to see how you can put it. You have to see the case as a whole. But I have not yet opportunity to the 4th transplant. But yes, 3 times I did 3rd transplant. 2nd transplant is very easy. You just go to the opposite side.
And sir, what is your take on notes, natural orifice for retrieval of donor kidney, like for female?
Yeah, my experience is different. I have done till now only 1. Because whenever I asked the female, we can take out your kidneys of the vagina, they all laughed and they were shy. Don't worry about phenyl is okay. So my experience is little, only 1 we have. And there was another situation when we did the hysterectomy. And so that after that hysterectomy, that stump was there. So then we took out the kidney from there.
Sir, next question will go for Dr. Anish Srivastava. So there's a question regarding renal artery stenosis, continuous sutures versus interrupted sutures. So is there any difference in the incidence of renal artery stenosis in any of these cases?
Well, I think we have to understand that when we do it with the internal iliac artery, right? So there the chances of stenosis are always more unless you have done very good spatulation. And if the caliber is good enough, then you can do both sides continuous. If you feel that the caliber is not as good, so on one side you can do continuous, other side you can do interrupted. So that is for the internal iliac artery, but with good spatulation, the stenosis should not occur. Right? If you are doing on the external iliac artery, you
Question.
do a good punching. So then in that case, you don't need to do interrupted for a single vessel. Sometimes I have done very small vessel, inferior epigastric in the females. They are not very friendly. So I have put the second small artery also on the external iliac. Then it is all interrupted. So for a single vessel, if you are doing on external iliac, everything continuous is fine. On the internal iliac, because the chances of stenosis are high, good spatulation, and then you can decide whether to do both continuous or one continuous and one interrupt.
Quick
So
comment.
just to be safe.
Pediatric patients, you'd like to do interrupted, some of the, at least one side.
Sorry,
I said in pediatric transplants.
Yeah, pediatric. Yeah. Oh, yes, yes.
To
Pediatric is
interrupt
different. Yeah,
at least on one side,
exactly.
at least on one side. Just as a point.
Yes, yes. I definitely agree on pediatric.
So there is a question for Dr. Anish Srivastav, sir. If donor kidney has got a benign small mass, so what should be done, or can we take it?
Well, nowadays it is possible to assess the renal mass with a good 3D CT angio. And once you have accepted this patient, then this mass on bench, you could do the kind of enucleation and whatever, then send it for the frozen, and then you can go ahead with the transplant. Small renal mass, and easy to I'm not talking the one which is endophytic or near the hilum, but I think the question is about some mass which is exophytic, easily it could be removed, and it is small.
And if there is a benign same side where the kidney we are taking, should we leave the adrenal or we should take that out? We don't know, it may progress, a smaller adenoma is there.
See, adrenalectomy now is done very, very sparingly, and in a small renal mass, even in large tumors, upper polar, also we don't do adrenalectomy. So in this case, there is absolutely no fear about adrenal. Leave the adrenal alone.
Even with the adrenal adenoma, maybe a 3 centimeter adrenal adenoma, asymptomatic, benign.
Oh, you are talking about adrenal adenoma?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I thought you were talking about the mass is in the kidney.
Yeah,
and
that is done, sir. That is done. Yeah.
That is done. So now the second situation is that there is an adenoma in the adrenal on this side. So I think that in that case we can as well remove it. I'm sure one has done the functional workup, one has done the meta-reference, everything, and then probably it is better one side adrenal. Many times adrenal is very badly stuck. So we have described gifted adrenalectomy also. We can't, go between the upper pole and the adrenal. So we can remove the adrenal easily.
So next question is, do you feel that the lymphocyte is more common when you're dealing with multiple vessels than single vessels?
I think, especially in our patients, there is a lot of reaction around the vessels, right? And it is generally probably to do some kind of subclinical filariasis or what, because all of us have experience, especially from the people coming from the suburbs and all, big lymph nodes. Sometimes it takes half an hour to dissect those lymph nodes and all that. So when most of the situations are like this, we must tie the lymphatics. We just don't pluck the lymph node and just burn and do something. So one has to take this precaution on the recipient bed. And of course, donor kidney, we have to take the precautions. So I don't think, in a nutshell, that whether it is multiple vessel or a single vessel, it makes a difference.
So in your algorithm in the management of lymphocyte, where is the installation of povidone iodine comes? Do you still do it, or it used to be done earlier?
Yes, we have done a lot. We have published also. And for small lymphocytes, of course, we were doing aspirations and then we were instilling. But then most of these cases, the success rate, I believe, during those days was close to 30 or 40%. So probably in a very small lymphocyte, if you think you could do that. Otherwise, just leave it alone. A small lymphocyte, if it is not in any a critical area, or if it is, towards that near the lower pole, compressing the ureter, if it is lying somewhere near the upper pole, then it can be left alone.
Dr. Anish, if there is a disparity in vessel size, suppose adult donor going to the kid, and how do you tackle that?
Vascularity, if you are doing it with the internal iliac, then this question comes. Okay. Right? If you are putting N2 on the external iliac, I don't think the vessel issue is at all in your.
You can put it on common iliac,
So,
kid.
External or common iliac. When you are doing N2, I don't think the issue will come.
But
So,
I want to say, Aditya,
yes, sir.
even if there is a disparity, quite often this disparity happens because the interiliac of a recipient is quite big and the donor artery, single artery may not be that big. But once you spatulate, and even if there is some disparity, it doesn't matter actually.
Still, with the spatulation, it works.
Yeah,
So
can I in
Yes,
pediatric, if you are doing it, don't use internal iliac. Internal iliac in pediatric population is very small. When I do pediatric transplant, first thing kidney is big. So when you will put it, kidney will be, the vessels will be lying over the common iliac vessels, or sometimes even higher up if the baby is small, because I have done as small as 3 years, 4 years baby. And sometimes the problem is you are putting on the right side, aorta is other side. But if you go to the common iliac, which where it is coming out under the IVC, you can put it there and put the vein on the IVC in the children, then your kidney sits nicely. And that vessels have a significant diameter and flow to take it. I will not put in a children into internal iliac or external
So you
iliac.
are talking of pediatric transplant
Large kidney going into
or in the adult?
Pediatric.
Are you talking of pediatric or adult?
Pediatric.
That was the question.
Pediatric, then of course it is, you have to, in fact, you have to go higher up in the common iliac quite often. Common iliac artery.
Yeah, we all do that, yes.
But what I was talking is about the adult. If there is a gross disparity, still you can go ahead.
Okay. So there is a question to Dr. Anish, sir. What could be the causes of on-table venous thrombosis and how one should tackle it?
Cause of on-table venous thrombosis could be only one, and that is bad technique. See, one has to be very, very clear about it, and that's why in my presentation I was emphasizing that this happens. It has happened in many hands. I know many of my students, some occasionally, and with so many others, it has happened. So they have shared, and this happens only on the right side where the retrieval of the kidney has not been. Sometimes it happens. You are doing right side, bleeding starts, and in that chaotic period, sometimes you may not get a good IVC cuff. Sometimes you may get a vein which has gone mostly inside the hilum. So if you take precautions, like some people do it upside down, some people will tie internal iliac, bring the external iliac up, try to make everything easy. But if still there is a problem, then only the venous thrombosis will occur on table, one. And two, sometimes, especially again on the right side, there are multiple veins, and you think that this vein could be tied, so that you have tied one vein and then another vein, and the vein which you have finally put is a smaller one, and therefore again here the venous outflow becomes compromised, and then sometimes thrombosis can occur. So those are the factors. In our Indian population, at least in our big experience, and I think most of us will agree that we don't have that kind of issues with the protein C, S, and the thrombophilic states practically they do not exist. So I would say technical. So improve your technique, and that should not happen. It has not happened with us.
Sir, in case you have to do a graft ureter to the native ureter anastomosis, so what will be your technique? It will be end to side, end to end, or what happens to the output of the native kidney? Dr.
Yes, we always tie the ureter on the native kidney, and probably we might have done some 20-25 cases by now, because we get referrals from elsewhere, leaks and obstructions. So those are the situations where you have a short graft ureter, or so sometimes we take the pelvis of the graft kidney and the native ureter. So in that case, we always tie, and there is a theoretical or a potential danger of the maybe some kind of infected hydronephrosis or stuff, but it has never happened. So you can safely tie it and do it.
There is also risk of so-called yo-yo effect with a large column of urine coming from above. We don't tie it.
Yes, so always tie. Yeah.
So there is a common question to Dr. Anish sir, and also Dr. Anand sir can answer that. So what is the safe anastomotic time duration while maintaining cold ischemia? How long is too long? Putting ice and
it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would say even up to an hour, usually nothing has happened. And I will tell you one thing. In the live related setting, and if you have done a good perfusion with STK versus, the homemade, like some people do the saline and just put some pepper in for perfusion. Vis-a-vis us and many other centers who do with the STK. I'm telling you, even if your rewarm scheme, this is called rewarm scheme at time, it goes beyond 1 hour also, we have hardly seen ATN and other problems. Dr. Anand, what is your?
Yeah, see, if you acceptable, I have seen around 30 minutes, nothing happens. But we have seen when people have taken longer time when you are teaching, then it may have some impact. But the tip is keep cooling the kidney. Even if your assistant is taking time, sometimes we have to revise if assistant has not done well. Then keep cooling. If you are every 5 minutes, you are cooling the kidney with the cold saline, temperature will always remain low, and then you can do it. So nowadays, whenever we keep teaching our fellows and the NB residents, they take longer time, but we make sure that after some time we just keep cooling it. And with that, even if they take time, but otherwise, till 30 minutes is very safe, very safe.
Aditya.
Yes, sir.
Technique is important. You should not be in a hurry. Just because
exactly.
You are looking at the clock, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. That should not happen. In live related setting, once you maintain proper cold ischemia, take a proper job. Doesn't matter even if it is slow, but it is a proper, thorough job is very important. Without looking at night, doesn't matter even if it takes 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 1 hour, it doesn't matter. So do a proper, thorough job. That is important.
I just want to add here one more thing. Keeping the kidney cool, as Dr. Anand says, is very important. And if you place the kidney slightly higher, then the kidney rests very peacefully. You don't have to handle the kidney also. And wrap a lot of ice if you want to, because the water which will come out of the ice will only go towards higher up to, into that, it won't come into your area. And if you do a little tilt down of the head, then again the water will not come into your view, when the ice melts. So wrap the kidney nicely in ice and keep it so that, even if you take longer, if your technique is slow, doesn't matter. The key is keep the kidney cold. Even if you have to stop, cool down the kidney again. That's the trick to do. Don't worry about the time, as everybody else has said. But keeping the kidney cool is most important.
So for the next question, maybe we'll again need some kind of poll also in this panel. Internal iliac artery. If the internal iliac is normal, what should be the choice of internal versus external? Many centers do only external, some do select internal, and some don't. So what is the take?
Yeah, the answer to that is that I'll tell you. See that if you see the natural history of atherosclerosis, atherosclerosis, when it starts happening after the age of 40, then usually internal iliac artery will be involved first. External will be there, but sparingly it will be better. So in a diabetic patient, after the age of 40, we don't use internal iliac artery. Below 40, if the internal is good, external is good, we always roll our finger to the origin of internal iliac artery and length of internal artery. If there is no atheroma, only then we accept. If there is any kind of atheroma, we straight away go to the external iliac artery. Younger population, internal iliac artery is good. If you are doing second transplant, then always use external iliac artery, because the internal both side internal is used, patient will become impotent, especially in male. So all these criteria you should take it, and sometimes in 45-year female patient we have seen there is no atherosclerosis anywhere. So we did use the internal iliac artery, but if there is any suspicion, then we'll go for external iliac artery.
Dr. Shroff, anything you want to say?
Yes, I totally agree with Anand. Very well put. And the smaller vessels will have atherosclerosis before the bigger vessels have, and for that reason, obviously, external iliac is definitely a better choice. And I always use external iliac, to be honest. The internal iliac anastomosis is not easier compared to external iliac. Only problem with internal iliac is you can get a little bit of torsion, so you have to be careful how you do your anastomosis. But external iliac requires a little bit of practice, and so that is again, you need to do a lot of fistulas to get that practice. And when you do spatulation,
So
external iliac, it sits very well.
So basically, Aditya, if everything is fine, and there are some compelling reasons for internal, external, forget that. But suppose everything is fine, then whether to choose internal or external actually depends on the personal choice. It has both external, internal, that way are perfectly all right. There are many centers will continue to do internal iliac. There are many centers will continue external iliac, and the outcome is almost the same. So if everything is fine, then it is a personal choice to select internal or external.
With time, we are getting older recipients, older donors. Our donor pool has changed. Our recipient also are getting older recipients also coming. So generally now we find, initially when I came to India in 95, a lot of young donors were there and young recipients used to come. Now I'm seeing that there's a total shift, So you need to be, maybe 50-50 internal iliac and external iliac, perhaps, the way I look at it.
very controversial practices which are around the transplant, giving Lasix to donor, giving mannitol to donor, giving mannitol to recipient, giving Lasix to recipient, giving noradrenaline to recipient, putting hot water in the bed, and so many things. I mean, you are aware. So what is the opinion of the house?
All those practices have actually stopped.
Individual.
Mannitol, Lasix, these are all, there are studies which have proved that all these are just the placebo effect or your satisfaction.
Yeah.
It does not make any difference whether you put hot water or whether mannitol and all were given routinely Lasix, but now it is all stopped. Now I don't think most centers do not give all this.
And you have to be careful when you give Lasix, because your blood pressure can drop in the recipient, If your blood pressure, let's say you release the clamp and blood pressure not very high, in that case, you give Lasix and you suddenly will see your blood pressure dropping. So you have to be a little careful. Even if you give it in a half a dose, don't give it in a full dose.
What about heparinization, sir? Routine heparinization in recipients?
I think I addressed this issue
Yes.
in one of this literature review. I showed the slide, because this debate used to go on, and it has not shown any benefit. So it should not be given, except maybe in a very, very select case. Yeah.
Anish, all vascular surgeons will use heparin, and I have been brought up on heparin, so I do use heparin. I don't know about how the literature is actually, how the studies have been done in transplants. But I have done, most of my cases, I would give a small dose of heparin. And if I have any problems and if I have any doubts, where, the kind of, the vessels don't look very good and all that, I routinely even use heparin up to 48 hours intravenously through a pump in a small dose.
Yeah, Dr. Shroff, that's why I reviewed that practice. And I said, in a very select case, like you say, you think, the artery was bad, and, during anastomosis, you felt that this requires little thin blood going around. So that may be the only issue, but otherwise it is not.
I think I will also agree with Dr. Anish what he has said, that we don't give routine heparin at all. In fact, In fact, whenever we have given heparin, we have seen there are more problems of perigraft
Correct.
collections and all those things. So routine heparin,
So,
we are
so,
also not
so,
advised.
so when you clamp the external iliac artery, and if you're having 2 or 3 vessels, you're also worried about thrombosis happening in that artery. If the vessel is not that great. So in that situation, I think heparin is safe. So again, if you're doing internal iliac, you may not even need to use heparin.
And if the BP of the recipient is around, say, 120, do we have to use inotrop to make it 150, 160 if we are not getting good output? So different practices, I've seen people doing it.
Yeah. So the point is that what was the usual blood pressures of a particular patient? Was he on 2, 3, or 4 antihypertensives, or he was practically normotensive with one drug? So we do come across every day this question comes. So what I suggest is that if the mean BP is keeping around 90, mean blood pressure, and if you release the clamps and if you get a reasonable diuresis, I don't think we need to, enhance or give, any kind of NORAD or whatever to enhance the BP. If you feel that, the mean is not keeping up well, you are going to 80 and all, then probably you can give it at that time. So that's how we generally practice.
So now we go to Dr. Shroff, sir. There is a question for you. What is the status of, I guess, okay. Dr. Shroff, sir? Yeah. So what is the status of swab transplant and domino transplants in India?
I think swaps are happening in some hospitals, definitely. Dominoes have happened in Kerala, and I think this is the way forward. To be honest, it's an excellent way to go forward. There is some limitations in our law, that you can only do it families to families. There can't be an unrelated swap happening. So these are some this one. But in Kerala, we have had some domino transplant, and I personally believe between ABO incompatible and swap, I would rather go for swap. Is my personal take.
So what are the technical hitches why most centers are not doing it?
So you need to do simultaneously. The problem is to get 4 theaters simultaneously in the same hospital is literally very difficult. So that is one of the challenges which we have, that both the teams should do it simultaneously so that there's no donor withdrawal. But having said that, some centers have actually done it one after the other also. After what they do is donor is anesthetized simultaneously kind of thing. The donor has a longer anesthesia time, or they're wheeled into theater at the same time. There have been situations where the donor has withdrawn. So that is the fear. But if you have a good disease donor program, and in such a situation, if you have a policy where there's something like that's happened, then that recipient doesn't suffer and gets the higher priority on disease donation, then this will work very well. So we need to create some good policies, and I think this is where the state can play a great role. And I know in Gujarat, Vivek Kute has been doing something on this, and he has done Nike RDC many swap transplant. So has some centers in Bombay, and so sporadically it's kind of picking up. Those are sporadic kind of hospitals which are doing it. I think this needs to be more commonly done in India. This is my take on this.
So next, horseshoe kidney in diseased donor. What is special technique or anything?
Didn't hear your question.
Yeah, horseshoe kidney in a diseased donor.
Yes.
How one should proceed about it?
Yes. To be honest, I have not had an encounter of that kind in my practice, but in living, I think some people have had those encounters as far as horseshoe kidney is concerned. They have been taken. You have to be careful also what kind of isthmus you have, and whether there is some communication between the two sides. And it is possible to on the bench, because with the disease donor, the advantage is you got a lot of time on the bench, so you can look at the anatomy on the bench and dissect the two kidneys, look at the anatomy well, and go forward doing it just like any other transplant. So I think in a disease donor, kidney of the horseshoe is easier to do than perhaps even the live ones.
Dr. Anand,
You may have some vessel anomalies and so on. So you have to see the anomaly as it is there and take adequate action.
Yeah, diseased kidney is not a problem. That you can always suture the isthmus. But in the live donor, I have done only one patient in which I fired the GI stapler over the isthmus and took the kidney out. There was 2 artery and 2 veins, which we anastomosed it and separately. That should not be a problem. But only thing you have to study it well, and even that kidney is also taken out laparoscopically. So we have done it. It is possible. And recently we were doing one horseshoe kidney nephrourotectomy and robotically, and we just sutured the isthmus very nicely with the vicryl suture and just came out. Same thing can be done with the in you have to do it, but you should only accept if you are confident and you want to do it. Disease donor is no problem. You should never reject a horseshoe kidney.
So
Absolutely.
there are multiple vessels which are supplying isthmus sometimes. So do we
Yeah,
have to
sure.
anastomose them while putting?
Same principle will apply, but we have applied for the multiple vessels. Same principle.
There are very rare instances if you're really, really worried, then you can also put them en bloc if you wish. That's also possible.
Both. So there is a question from Venki Bhargava to Dr. Shroff, sir. In cadaveric renal transplant, is it mandatory to take a biopsy while doing bench dissection? And swab cultures from the surface and all.
So it depends if it's a marginal donor, if you had an elderly donor whose creatinine was slightly high, then you need to do some kind of a biopsy. And there are some scores available to see how much of glomerular sclerosis is there. But getting a pathologist in the middle of the night for getting a biopsy and getting the actual results can be challenging. So in that situation, do take a biopsy, at least for later studies, to know if the creatinine doesn't come to normal. That what kind of kidney you're having. If the glomerular sclerosis is more than 20%, you should not be taking that kidney. Because, especially if it's a young recipient. Because in a young recipient, you want to give a kidney at least for 5 years, if not for 10. But if it's an older recipient, then I may give that kind of kidney which is marginal, to the older recipient, because their lifespan may be only, let's say, 10 years, and if you give them 5 extra years, it is good for them. So that's how I look at it. So yes, it depends on the donor. I don't routinely do biopsies, only in case of where the normal creatinine for the donor, was slightly higher than the baseline. In that situation, yes. Many times we also do biopsy on the table after the use of clamps. We do that as well. So it depends on the situation again entirely, but not as a routine practice.
During COVID era.
Sorry, can't hear.
I think the listener is asking about the COVID-19 era. Do you routinely do the biopsy of a deceased donor in COVID-19?
Oh, I see. I don't know if that is again required, to be honest. COVID-19 will be isolated in the kidney tissue or not. I'm not even sure about that. I don't know I haven't seen any literature, because COVID-19 doesn't appear in the urine apparently. So if it doesn't appear in the urine, I don't know whether it's there in the kidney tissue or not. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that.
So I think this was already discussed as you have summarized. So there are multiple questions again with respect to the times we are in the COVID-19. So as such, there is no contraindication or legal issue per se if somebody goes ahead and does a transplant, proper taking consent and everything, and checking the patient, or do we have to do a COVID test on donor or recipient?
Between the live and deceased, if I have to do, I'll do the deceased. I'll not do the live. But in live, I have 2 lives to be looked at. And in deceased, I have at least only 1 life to be looked at. So between the 2, I would rather go for deceased donor transplant if I have to do at the moment, till I have more clarity on how the situation is going to unravel. And I also need to think about my staff. That's very important, except besides myself being a captain of the ship. So we have to be, we have to take a lot of things in balance and see what your hospital policy is, what the government policy is. If something goes good, nobody's going to look at you. If something goes bad, then you will be the center of attraction for the whole country.
Aditya, about this,
you'll become Kanika Kapoor of transplants.
About this testing, what you are talking about, this testing, is that it does not depend on you. It is amply made very clear from everywhere that even if you send, you have to fill the pro forma, and they will decide whether the testing will be done or not. Even if you send pre-op testing of all the patients, supposedly you are doing the elective surgery, whether it is donor, recipient, or any other surgery, it is the lab which decides. Even if it is a private lab, even if you are ready to pay double amount, the test will not be done unless it is fitting into the criteria. That is purely under government control. Government will decide
Sabnesh,
whether
my
the testing is
suggestion,
done or
my
not.
suggestion is work with the local health authorities rather than the center. And the lab kits are now getting more and more available. In India, the lab kits are being manufactured now in Pune. So once the lab kits get available, because we have shortage of lab kits, you know. So if once
Then
they
there
get
will not
available,
be any
they will
problem.
be able to do it.
At present, it is severely restricted.
Yes, I agree with you.
There is a development, I'll tell you. The Liver Transplant Society has written to ICMR, and ICMR has allowed them to do the COVID test before any liver transplant because they said our liver transplant cannot wait. Same way that ISOT has also written to the ICMR that before the liver, allow us to do the COVID test before the kidney transplantation, and it is presumed they have sent all the literature that it will be allowed. In my hospital, with lot of deliberation with the ICMR told you can do it, and so and our hospital has the authority to do the COVID test. So now they are doing all in patient who is going to admitted has to do COVID test.
No,
So,
is it Dr. Anand Kumar? This is a very important finding. I think all those who are listening, they have to understand. Is it that all pre-op patients, even if non-transplant, they will be allowed to do COVID test?
my
Or
hospital,
it's only for the transplant, elective transplant.
that guideline has been issued and it is now being followed. Anesthetist said they will not operate. So now everybody is going to be operated. He's admitted. COVID test is done. Within 8 to 12 hours, you get the report, and then next day is operated.
But sir, there is a gray area while COVID test can an initial incubation period. It may not be coming positive.
I told you before, whether if the patient is incubation period, it depends whether is in day 1, day 4, day 6, day 10. So because symptomatic patient will also set the virus. So there is the problem, and you might miss the train and may get into.
You know, there is a mortality of patients in this COVID-19 era who actually requires emergency intervention as well. There's a mortality from COVID-19, and there's a hidden mortality, which may be even higher, of patients who are dying because they don't have medical help and intervention. What about all those emergencies which are in urological emergencies? You know, somebody who is a diabetic who has pyonephrosis. Those kind of situations, need to be done. And you cannot have one blanket statement that you cannot do it because this doesn't meet the criteria. So this has to be looked at very, very urgently.
Now I can tell you.
Before Dr. Anand Kumar tells, there is one point which I want to ask Dr. Anand Kumar also, that COVID-19 test, if you do it, if it is negative, does not mean that he's not going to get COVID.
Safety.
So negative does not rule out anything. Positive,
but relative safety.
Positive. But negative does not mean anything.
Sabnesh, it's only relative safety, not that it does exclude. Relative safety is a little more if you rule out, that's all it is. You need 2 swabs at least to rule out completely.
Yeah, so that question is, yes, that is true. And it has got 30% false negative. So it all depends on viral load and how well the sample is taken. If it is nasopharyngeal, somebody has not gone deep, just superficially has come out, it may come out negative. Oropharyngeal, again, if he has gone and tested the tonsil around that area, patient may cough at that time, and if the health worker is scared, he might just take it from there, it may not come out. If it is taken from the bronchial, it is 100% becomes positive. Then the false negative rate is less, but that is not advised and advocated. So that part is not. But what I want to tell you, all those things are very easy to talk. Now we have a COVID hospital. My one patient was admitted there. He need nephrology consultation. He need ultrasound. And all those things are not easy. It takes 15 minutes to wear PPE properly. Then you go to that hospital and there are 3-4 checks. They will ask why you are coming, what is happening. And then persuade your other colleagues to go and see them. And they have to wear PPE. That is also difficult. Doing ultrasound, they have dedicated ultrasound machine. And that ultrasound machine was broken. Now, till that machine was repaired, ultrasound was not done. CT will only be done when the COVID test has become negative. Then they will send. And there is a lot of problem once you start doing it. And say so many phone calls, so many problems. and everybody is scared. There is a phobia, and everybody is nurse, technician, everybody is scared. It is not easy. Every day we are facing lot of problem in handling those patients.
So regarding the what Dr. Sabnis had asked the doubt over the test is failing us on two fronts. One is it may give positive where they have tested in Germany.
It is
They,
positive. It is positive.
sir, just let me just tell. So Germany, they have tested from surfaces in many area. The test came positive, but the virus was not replicable. So mostly it was just the RNA, not a replicable virus. It wasn't in the cell. On the other side, many times patient can still be positive. So there is a live question coming for Dr. Shroff, sir. As you have said, uh, we have to see when things evolve and we should decide when to start. But we know China, things started in December. There is a Lancet study which shows 25 to 30% mortality in major case surgeries, major surgeries. So transplant is a major surgery with immunocompromised status, and things have not gone well, started normally there yet. So are we seeing like December or something to really find out what we do?
I wish I could be the star, raiser to tell you the actual date.
Astrologer.
I know that's what I'm saying. But I think not before September, October is my personal impression in India at the earliest, when we may feel safe enough. One thing about this viruses, coronaviruses, is one thing which you should notice from the previous coronavirus. When corona SARS, the acute respiratory syndrome started first in 2002, it suddenly disappeared also. It came suddenly and disappeared suddenly. Same thing happened with the MERS, in Middle East. So there is a hope that this virus will just, self-annihilate, and disappear for some time. So just hope for that happens soon. But this is a new virus. There is no herd immunity. We need to get the herd immunity in our population. Then we'll be safe. And that will take time, because this virus has never infected human beings ever. That's the problem.
With lockdown, you will never get herd immunity.
That's right. After you won't get herd immunity.
But sir, there is a point. There is a point in that about SARS and MERS, Middle Eastern one. They were limited outbreaks. 7,000
Yes.
people, 700,
Yes.
8,000 people, 700 deaths. MERS was
Yes.
limited. So
Yes.
the Virology Institute, Dr. Fauci, he has concluded
Yes.
by all.
And even man-to-man transmission was very
Same
less.
is the
in this
question.
case.
Yeah.
This is a very effective virus, this new one.
And if we wait for the herd immunity for 1.3 billion people to get it, I don't think it will ever happening. The question is to Dr. Anish Srivastav, sir. So particularly in government institutes, which are very much obviously driven by the policies of the government, private hospitals may decide to go ahead and do a transplant with proper consent and everything. Do you really foresee transplants happening at your center soon?
Yes, I think that's a very, very important question. So there are two issues. There is another issue to the government hospitals, which I am going to tell you now, because like in SGPGI, they have made it the apex center for the state, right? So it's a big COVID center. So we are already having very limited manpower. We don't have lot of residents like medical colleges or in the civil hospital who can be on the forefront. We have only limited, like I have only 12 residents. So they go one by one, right? So then they go to quarantine. So there is a big issue. We will be very soon exhausted. So even when we start doing, say, transplant or even elective surgery, there may be a larger gap as compared to other hospitals where you can have, so government, because the focus of the government and most of the hospitals like ours is only COVID, and COVID. So that is an issue because our manpower may get exhausted. I have the same resident who will assist me for transplant, and the same people are going as a frontliner doing the duties there also. So it will be I think time only will tell. It may be a little serious issue. Yeah, we may have to start doing things little later on as compared.
And then he can conclude it. So, sir, if a private hospital now, after all the consent and everything, decides to do a transplant. But we have seen in court of law, the rule about transplant consent keeps changing. They have real doubts that doctor has really communicated when it was time to do that. So are we on weaker legal grounds if something goes wrong? Dr.
So
Shaw,
can
Dr.
I answer
Anand, Dr.
that?
Anish.
Can I take that first?
Yes, yes.
So the Epidemic Act was, invoked by Government of India, the Epidemic Act of 1996, and then the Disaster Act also was invoked. So in this pandemic time of this COVID-19, you have an extra layer of safety if you do something in good faith. So the Act actually says if something has been done in good faith, this should not go to the court very clearly. So there is an extra layer of safety in this pandemic area. So in this pandemic area, if you feel a transplant is absolutely essential and you've done it in good faith, and if you taken proper informed consent and documented it, then you're most likely be protected. But having said that, in India, sometimes things can go wrong.
No,
So
Aditya, there is no
Yes, sir.
problem of consent, because consent you can always take. You can take video consent, you can take everything. So that I don't think is the hindrance. The question is whether the center, as Dr. Anand Kumar said, the law government has not made a general statement. So if your center is ready to do transplant, I don't think there is any problem.
Okay. Just to, before Dr. Anant answers that, faith becomes questionable the moment you charge for the procedure. So,
in United States, they have removed this. All the doctors are looking after these patients. There is a no lawsuit can be filed against them, and they are also told to less computer work, to only record the important things, and paperwork has decreased down because you have to look after the people, look after the faith, and no lawsuit. President has passed the law in each, and each governor has passed the law in there. No lawsuit if you're looking after these patients. So in this time, if you're done in a good faith, nothing other, but yes, it is important to take a proper consent, inform everything and do. Nowadays, I can tell you, most of the patients themselves are scared. They are saying no. Only few are want to be operated.
Very true.
so there's one last question coming. Maybe Dr. Anand can answer. A role of calcium channel blocker injected into the vessel to relieve spasm. Is there any role?
I don't think any role, and don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do
Cause
that.
more harm by injecting it and causing.
Dr. Vikas, if you want to, we are already 1.5 hours beyond that.
Yes. I think this is a time to bring end to this wonderful session. And thank you, Aditya, and the entire team of Alto and all the panelists for this wonderful discussion. And we look forward for more such discussions in the time to come. Thank you so much, everybody.
Because before everybody switches off, can I just say again, if you want to do telehealth consultation, get familiar with the guidelines, and there is a course going on, and you have to log into tsi.gyannet.in. If you do an online, it's a 2-hour course. If you do it, you get also an assessment and certification, and then you can practice safe telemedicine. Thank you.
Another thing, lots of apps are available. Like in my hospital, My Health Plus Doctor apps has been downloaded by the hospital. I think they purchased the app. It is now downloaded in everybody's mobile. And every day you see the teleconsultation 1, 2. So in that, patient will send his all the report. He will fix up a time. And that time you call, it will be video call. And he is already paid. If he has paid, the green button will appear. And and you can write prescription.
But Anand Kumar,
Wait a minute. Which he will download it and go to the pharmacy, and pharmacy will pay for it. I'm not saying everybody has to download same apps, but there is this. My hospital has done it, and we found it is quite useful apps for doing teleconsultation, and everything. You have prescription, everything is in writing, and everything is recorded.
so that's good. What I was trying to say was that that's just to understand the limitations of the apps and what it involves. As you said, consent is there, prescription is there, all this is allowed, but you have to go on a certain format. And to understand that format is the reason why you need to look at these guidelines. And I'm sure your app is very good. And there are many apps, as you said, out there. But to actually practice safe and to know exactly what the guidelines require, you need to be very familiar. Otherwise, that can be a risk. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So I guess we
Thank
take
you.
a call on this. Thank you everyone for coming together. Sunday well spent to all my teachers and all seniors. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Be safe at home.
You too.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you.